All right. Next question we have. This is from Michael. I wonder what I have to do when a bottle of ink gets too low to use with a piston or vacuum filler. I can use my syringe to fill cartridges or converters, but what about these other pens? So pens with built-in filling mechanisms. Can you still syringe these, Drew? Please guide us, oh great master of the syringe.
I got excited about this one, Brian, because there are things to talk about here. Mm-hmm. There are things to talk about here that we don't often get to talk about.
True, because no one does them.
All right. Bottle stuff, all right?
Okay.
Now, they should do them because there are a lot of exciting ways to do exactly what Michael needs to do. Okay,
I agree.
So Michael, if you have a TWSBI pen, there are two phenomenal options available to you, the VAC 20 bottle and the Diamond 50 Inkwell. So the Diamond 50 Inkwell is the more expensive, larger of the two. It's glass, but it'll fit, the larger TWSBI pens and anything that has a kind of a removable grip. You can actually put a TWSBI pen, after you take the grip off, right onto the bottle, and the bottle itself has a stainless steel straw that goes right to the bottom of the inkwell, so it's always going to be able to fill your pen regardless of how much ink is actually in the reservoir. It's amazing. You can take the top off and just use it as a plain old inkwell if you want to, but it's a great choice, compatible with your TWSBI pens that are in the larger size that have removable grip sections. So if you have a VAC pen, the VAC Mini, VAC 700, VAC 700R, then you can get a VAC 20 bottle, which again, the pen itself attaches directly to the bottle. You can tip the bottle upside down, plunge up the plunger, and that thing will get a full fill. Like, we're talking, you do that 2 or 3 times, no air, man. It's amazing, and it's a fun little bottle. Again, it's versatile. You can use it as a standard inkwell if you want to, or just take off the top part of the top cap for use with a VAC pen. And not enough people know about these. I think if you're gifting a TWSBI to somebody, and it's one of those pens, give them one of those bottles, because it makes filling fun. Speaking of making filling fun, if you buy a Noodler's ink bottle, which there are a ton of, or you can just buy an empty one. They cost nothing on our website. We always have them in stock because Noodlers are super popular. So we always have extras. So it's like one of the empty bottles you can pretty much count on being in stock. You can then buy an Ink Miser Intra bottle, and this little cup that sits inside of a Noodler's ink bottle. You can still put the cap on like normal, but then you tip it upside down. It fills the cup, even if you've only got a little bit of ink in there, fills the cup and gives you an amount of ink up at the very top so you can fill your pen even if the bottle is, 3/4 empty. They also sell the Ink Shot, which is a standalone little ink cup that has a little platform, so you can just pour ink into it and use it that way. So the Ink Miser, they're like $5 and $6. Like, why not buy one? Brian, we need to do a video on these because they're tremendously undervalued and underappreciated, but they're really great and so cheap.
Yeah, they're so simple to use too.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the Intra bottle pretty much only fits Noodlers. You could probably find some more bottles that it would fit in, but just stick with Noodlers. They're easy, they're affordable, very accessible to get. And that's it.
Yeah.
Go forth. Have fun, Michael.
Yeah. I'll caveat that with saying, Drew, you said that the bottles don't cost anything. That's not true. They do have a cost to them. He was speaking relatively. They're a couple of bucks. It's basically just for the labor of us kind of cataloging them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff
They're
like
super
that.
cheap, though.
Yeah, but a dollar or two, something like that, depending on the bottle. The fancier bottles, it costs a little bit more. The rarer they are and stuff like that. But
yeah, let's see. A Noodler's bottle.
I think Noodler's like $1.
I mean,
$1.50,
yeah, $2.
$2. Yeah, so it's pretty rare. But we actually used to clean those bottles out like a long time ago, but then we actually stopped doing that because we found that people actually liked to get a little bit of the leftover ink of whatever was in there. So it's a random bottle you get, but it will be inky, and you'll get to like swab up maybe a random color that you've never seen before. So a little side benefit there to buying a random bottle. But anyway,
yeah, we sell all of our all of our empty bottles. And one thing that I've been wanting to do, Brian, I'm probably not going to actually do this, but I'm going to tell you that I will. I want to make little miniature terrariums, like closed terrariums, so it's like its own little ecosystem. Like, they make, if you do it right, you can seal them off and it will create its own thing. Like, why couldn't you do that with ink bottles and have like a bunch of different little habitats?
It just seems like that would be very small. You'd have to be super precise with your different,
Which makes it
aspects.
cuter.
You know what? Wouldn't surprise me if that's a thing. You know.
Somebody should do that and take a picture so I don't have to.
Yeah, please.
Because mine would not look as good.
I don't know. Maybe you can find inspiration. This could be your new thing, Drew.
Do you have more sense to add onto this one, Brian?
I do, actually.
Looks like you have something unnecessary and obnoxious you want to talk about.
I did add a couple of notes in here. No. So, one thing that's really helpful, and I was thinking, like, how often are people really in this situation where you have to be at the end of a bottle, which already means you're a pretty hardcore user. And you have to be wanting to use that specific color with a piston or vac filler. So it's pretty niche, but I think the more common situation is when you're filling from ink samples, because a lot of times you might struggle to be able to either fit your pen in, because a lot of these piston and vacuum pens, they might be slightly larger, so might have a hard time fitting in some of the vials, or it's just not enough ink to really be able to get in there, especially with something like vacuum filler. So, everything Drew said is applicable, but I think if you have an ink syringe, there's some different techniques that you can use that are handy for that as well. It's going to depend a lot on the pen, and so your mileage may vary, but I have a video already out there. I think it's pretty old, but it still holds up. In fact, I believe I filmed it in my house like 10 years ago. But it's called the feed saturation filling method. I'm not going to actually do it because you kind of need multiple hands and it's really hard to demonstrate without doing some fantastic stuff. But basically, you fill your syringe with ink, which you can do obviously until the bottle is completely empty. You take whatever it's really for piston pens, not so much for a vac, but you take your piston, like I have here, and you put it all the way down as if you were going to fill it from a bottle. You take your syringe and you put, a few drops of ink and saturate the feed so that it's completely full. And then basically you just draw your piston back until it sucks that ink out of the feed. And you do that repeatedly. And effectively what you're doing is you're just allowing the pen to draw ink into the pen through the feed just a little bit at a time. So if you're really determined, or if you can get it filled halfway and you just want to top it off, it's a kind of a nice little hack to be able to do that without having to get a whole nother bottle and all these other things. So if you have an ink syringe around, you may already have everything that you need. Or I'm holding a TWSBI here. There's, TWSBI, Pelican can do this with a lot of their pens, but a lot of them have removable nib units. So you could obviously, if you can pull the nib and feed out, that works. Or if you can pull off the nib unit as a whole, there's usually, well, not usually, there always is going to be a hole where the ink is traveling down through anyway. And basically it's like a giant converter now, and you can just fill the entire body of the pen by removing the nib unit. So that's a nice little hack. The TWSBI VAC 700, you can do that as well, even though it's a vacuum filling pen. I would not recommend trying to remove the nib unit off of a Pilot Custom 823. They have very explicit warnings on there not to touch that nib unit. So do not do it with that pen. With that one, I'm afraid you're just going to have to figure something else out. But with the TWSBI VAC 700, you can remove the nib unit. Oh boy, I hope I can do it with this one. Yeah, okay. I just hadn't pulled it before. Need a little more leverage. Okay, so the nib unit comes off there. Now, with the VAC 700, you've got the seal to work around there, so you've got to kind of get it around there, but I can still get the syringe in there just fine. So, same principle works there. You put the nib unit back on, and then you can be on your merry way. The only downfall of doing it that way is then your feed is not going to be saturated like it would be if you filled it directly from the bottle. So you've got to give it a little bit. You've got to let it work its way through, shake it down a little bit, or get a little bit of ink onto the feed, maybe from the syringe if you want to help get it going. But it might take a minute or two just to get the ink going again. But once it does, it'll flow forever because it's a vacuum pen and it has a lot of ink capacity. So there you go. So there may be certain pens that are kind of tough to work around it, especially if they're not removable in any way, shape, or form, or if, it has a feed that has no fins on it. So there's just really no way to get ink in there. But I imagine it'll solve for probably 90% of the pens that you might come across in that situation. And that's it. That's all. I'm done.
And there you have it.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Moving on.